Good morning and welcome to First Unitarian Universalist Church of Nashville. My name is Jay Tiefenbrunn. My pronouns are she and hers, and I am very pleased to be your director of music ministries. I'd like to invite you to join us in singing this morning with number 323, Break Not the Circle, hymn number 323 in the gray hymnal. Please rise in body or in spirit or prepare for singing.
Blessed is the fire that burns deep in the soul. It is the flame of the human spirit, touched into being by the mystery of life. It is the fire of reason, the fire of compassion, the fire of community, the fire of justice, the fire of faith. It is the fire of love burning deep in the human heart, the divine glow in every life.
You may notice that there is a rosebud here. That's to celebrate the birth of Molly Catherine Newkirk. Mom, Mariel Newkirk, told us that Molly was born on February 7th. She's healthy and happy, and Mom, Dad, and little brother Emmett love her a lot. And I'm sure we'll be seeing them next month, not this. Okay, I'd like you to help me with a call to worship. Inside your service notes, it's down in the bottom left. It says "Fun Mission." I'd like you to read that with me if you are so moved to join me. The mission of the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Nashville is to create community, to nurture spiritual growth, and to act on our values in the broader world, guided by reason and compassion. We serve each other in this mission by being present as witness to each other's lives, seeing each other and being seen, listening to each other and being listened to, agreeing to be open to the differences of beliefs and values that we hold individually, learning to build ever-deepening connections with individuals and the community, inviting each other's potential into the light in an atmosphere of encouragement and love. May it be so.
Hunger to give and thirst to receive in all of our
Good morning.
I want to tell you a story about a birthday when I got Norman, and I didn't want him. I wanted a different kind of pet, not Norman. I wanted a pet that would play fetch and run with me, or one that would climb trees and chase a ball of yarn. Someone who was furry and would sleep on my bed at night. Not Norman. He just swam around and around and around and around and around. That's it. And so I said, you know, I'm taking you back to the pet store and trade you in for another pet. But then I looked and I said, you know, they're not going to want to trade in with this dirty, gunky bowl. I'm going to have to clean that. And then when Norman got back into the bowl, he was jumping and dipping and waving his fins. He was just really cute. And I laughed. And I looked at him and I said, don't think just because I laughed that I'm not trading you in. Well, I thought, you know, if I take him to school for show and tell and I talk him up real good, then maybe someone will take him. And so the next morning, I put him into my little red wagon, and we headed off for school. And I ran into my friend Austin, who has this awesome dog, and at least 7 puppies. And so I was playing with the puppies, and Austin said, well, what are you doing for show and tell? And I said, well, I'm bringing Norman. Well, who's Norman? My goldfish. I turn around, and the puppies are all gathered around his fish bowl. And I run to rescue him, and when I get there, half of his water is gone. So I get to school, and I put more water in, and I'm telling Norman how sorry I am. I'm really, really sorry. And he's looking at me kind of googly-eyed. So when it came my turn for show and tell, I got up there with Norman, and all of a sudden, Emily screamed, Jenny, who let my snake out? And everyone is running and jumping and yelling, and no one cares at all about how I got Norman or what goldfish are like. They didn't even look at him. Well, that didn't turn out the way I hoped it would. So later that day, I went to my music lesson, and I took out my tuba, and I'm playing along, and I look over at Norman, and he's swaying, glug, 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 with his little fishy mouth. And I say, look, Norman's singing. And Maestro says, pay attention, and try to play the correct notes. Well, the maestro kept me after so that I could get more practice. And I was going to go to the pet store, but then it was too late. And so I took Norman home in my little red wagon, and I reminded him, don't you think that I'm keeping you just because you like my music. Okay, we're going to the pet store tomorrow. The next day was Saturday, and we went to the pet store. And there were dogs and cats and guinea pigs and lizards and mice and all kinds of birds, cockatiels and pretty little birds that chirped all over the place. There were so many really cool pets. But they were not Norman. And so Norman and I went back home. When I was at the pet store, I bought a nice big tank with a diver kind of guy in there and all kinds of cool stuff. And I put Norman in there, and I said, you know, when I first got you, I didn't think I wanted to keep you. But now, for everything in the world, I would not trade you in. Not Norman. And now we will sing our children to class using the blessing on the inside back cover of your gray hymnal.
Good morning. My name is Allison Thompson, and I am a member of this church. I serve on the board, and I am the chair of the Resource and Development Council. It is my pleasure to welcome you here in the sanctuary and those joining us online to worship this morning. In order to reach a wider community than those able to be physically present on Sunday morning, our services are live streamed on YouTube and Facebook. Joys and Concerns are not live streamed or recorded. Before I continue, let me remind you to silence your cell phones. As Unitarian Universalists, our spiritual paths vary, but in this congregation we have made a covenant together. We affirm our interdependence, celebrate our differences, and work for justice. We are a welcoming congregation, and we deepen our relationships as we serve our congregation's mission to create community, nurture spiritual growth, and act on our values in the broader world, guided by reason and compassion. I want to extend a special welcome to visitors worshiping with us this morning. We ask you to wear the paper name tags because it helps us recognize you as someone we'd like to meet. If you are seeking a spiritual home, we hope that you may find it here. Whether you are new to Unitarian Universalism or visiting from another UU congregation, we invite you to stop by the welcome table after the service to have questions answered. All are welcome to attend our church, and people become members of this congregation by signing the membership book and supporting their church with their time and finances. If you are considering joining the church, please talk to our assistant minister, Denise Gouch. Following the service, we hope everyone will enjoy coffee and fellowship in the social hall, where you will also find information about current opportunities for engagement and reflection. There are many announcements in the weekly bulletin, which I hope you will take home and read. I have been asked to highlight a few more. The membership committee invites newcomers and curious visitors, to a Meet the Minister luncheon today at 12:30 in Classroom A, just off the social hall. Bring your questions about Unitarian Universalism or First UU Nashville and chat with our lead minister, Reverend Gail Seavey. Children are welcome, and a light lunch will be provided. Our new Environmental Action Group, ENACT, is hosting a 30-minute talk about recycling in the Thoreau Room today between services, and again on March 15th after each service. Come if you would like to learn more about recycling. We will host 8 homeless men for our Room in the Inn ministries only 2 more times this season, March 6th and 20th. We have come close to having to cancel a few times this season for being short 1 or 2 volunteers. All but 2 duties take only 1 to 3 hours to do and do not require you to spend the night. If you can help, please sign up today in the social hall. It is very rewarding work. Our 2020 Vision Stewardship campaign has begun. Please meet with your visiting steward soon. As soon as you do, you are entered into our weekly raffles of $100 gift cards. Chocolate and halos are available at the stewardship table today. Thank you.
Whether you're feeling serious or curious today, I do invite you to finish arriving here in this space, to take a deep breath, or 2 or 3, settle into your seat, and be aware that you, like all of us, have brought with you the residue of the hours, the days that have come before this moment. You have brought all that you are into this sacred space that we create together. And as you think back over the time just before this moment, you may become aware of certain joys, celebrations, profound sorrows, or concerns that you have brought with you. And if you would like to make those present to this gathered community, you are invited to come forward and place a stone in this bowl of water, which represents us, the gathered community. And our lay minister today, Chad Wood, will help you select a stone and place it in the bowl. If you would like to have your joy or your concerns spoken aloud, there are yellow slips of paper in the pockets of the pew right in front of you. If you'll fill that out legibly, Chad and I will read those aloud to the congregation. You can hand me those slips as you come forward. That remain as yet unspoken in our hearts, let us join together, inspired by classic words from Wayne Arneson. Oh, do you want to read it? Before we do that, so let us hold this specific hope and prayers together with everything, together with everything that lies unspoken in our hearts. And let's join in the spirit of prayer, inspired by the words, the old familiar words to many of us, written by Wayne Arneson. Spirit of life and love, help us to take courage together here with our friends. We know the way is often hard, the path is never clear, and the stakes are sometimes so very high. Help us to take courage. Help us to know that deep down there is another truth. We are never alone. Amen. Blessed be. In just a moment, the ushers will come among us with the offering bowls. As always, your generosity is received with gratitude, and we want to make sure you are all aware, as many of you already are, that we share a portion of our offering every Sunday with an organization that is working outside the walls of this congregation to support the values that are in line with our own. For the month of March, we have a new Share the Plate partner, and it is the Major Minors. They are a a choir affiliated with Nashville in Harmony for younger singers. And you can find more about the work they're doing in the order of service. You can also find in the on the cover of the order of service directions for online giving if you're inclined to give that way. For those of you joining us through the internet, you can always find donation instructions on our website, firstuunash.org. Your generosity is received with deep gratitude.
Good morning. My name is Bob Day, sometimes known as Pledge Bob Squarepants. Thank you, Marguerite Mills, for giving me that name. So we're now going to have what we call the call for commitment. Many of you visiting stewards and leaders in the board and other committee chairs and task force people have already had an opportunity to pledge, and we're going to ask you to bring your envelopes down front, put them in this basket. I'll be standing right here, and I want to let you know that there's a list of everyone who's pledged here as of 10 o'clock Friday morning. There's more since then. And the list on here has raised $211,141 so far. 46 pledges, $211,000. So, are we going to do music? Yeah. Oh, okay.
You're going to lead it, Bob.
Oh. Thank you, Elaine.
Please rise in body or in spirit or prepare for singing our call for commitment song number 1074 in the turquoise hymnal. Whirl around, number 1074.
Good morning. My name is Elaine Bailey-Freed, and I'm honored and delighted to share a stewardship moment with you today. This church is very important to me for many reasons, one of which is being a worship associate. And I also want to honor Gail today because worship associates came about during her time here with us. So I joined the church in 2007 and was very happy that someone saw me. It was Nancy Stott, actually, and she asked me to join the worship committee. I believe it was you, Nancy. And so I did that. I became co-chair a little later after that, and this is before we had worship associates. In case you missed it, Gail explained during a service in January on creativity what worship associates are, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. So, somewhere along the way during a worship meeting, maybe, 9 or 10 years ago, Gail introduced the idea of worship associates as people who would collaborate with the minister and contribute to the elements of the service. People interested in becoming worship associates would attend a series of classes that she and the associate minister would give on the elements and intents of each part of our service, the flow and things like that. Along the way, the participants would be guided to discover what sparked meaning for them in worship. Each person trained could choose to work with the minister from time to time as desired. So we decided to do it, and worship associates became a kind of a subset of worship committee, and we would alternate months. One month we'd have worship committee, the next month we'd have worship associates. And along the way after that, we also adopted a 3-year cycle of themes, which I believe we're on the 3rd or 4th iteration of. The themes provide cohesion and topical balance to our services. We take the big religious words from our culture and redeem them, to borrow from this month's theme of redemption, finding ways to think about them that reflect our UU values. And these are hard words like God and salvation and forgiveness. As worship associates discuss the topics and the slant of each service in our meetings with vulnerability and creativity, our shared ministry becomes very real. And there's more. We gradually transitioned from alternating between the two groups to what we have today, which is that all meetings are primarily devoted to discussing our worship topics, planning our services 3 months out. This especially helps with stuff like ordering and rehearsing music. And I'm not going to lie, our meetings are the most fun in the whole church, but I've told a lot of people that already, so you probably know. So that's the history of worship associates. And why do I give my time and money to this church? I love all the things I do here. I've gotten to do several of them today, including being a worship associate. I feel so happy each time I read a poem or share a reflection or a meditation with you. And I'm very grateful for Gail and her ministry with us and to me, and for the music, for the friendships, for the meaning making. Even though I've retired, I've been able to keep my gift at my pre-retirement level. Come talk to me if you're interested in becoming a worship associate. Gail will conduct her last set of classes this spring. And if I or another visiting steward contacts you, please say yes, so we can visit with you and talk together about what this church means to us. This is one way we see each other and train our sights together on developing a dream for our future. Thank you.
There you go. Thank you very much. We do need each other, right? That was the other song. Okay. Skepticism. So I've heard people actually say, I know what I'm going to give. I give to the church. I don't need to talk to anybody. Goodbye. Thank you. That's fair, right? So I know I could just say, well, we're not selling anything. If any of you is a member already, and that's the only people we're calling on this one, we think you've already committed to our mission, and stewardship is all the ways we take care of our community that supports that mission. And it's pretty straightforward, and we just need to get to know you because, hey, oh, you're here, Mom is here. Welcome. I'm just, never mind. I'm just saying, people with the flower. Okay, so, see, we got to see each other clearly. And it is, in our mission, we don't talk about this much. There's this list of things that we read this morning about what helps us do our mission. And one thing that helps us do our mission that's very important is seeing each other and being seen. I see you, you see me. Listening and being listened to. That is one of the main ways that we are able to build beloved community, nurture our spiritual growth, and act on our values in the wider world. But for the skeptics among us, I'm going to suggest that we turn our skepticism to look with 2020 vision at two myths. We're very good at being skeptical about myths and deconstructing them, right? And there's two economic myths that I think shaped my view about money that made me skeptical of things like stewardship drives. And those two myths have to do with human nature. What is human nature? And what is called the tragedy of the commons. And I'm going to explain what that is. But they're myths that our culture lives by when it comes to money. The first is human nature. The way economic policy has worked in this country and now pretty much over the world for the last, since World War II, is to have this view that at the center is a certain idea of what human beings are. Now, we've been meeting to discuss a book called Donut Economics by Kate Raworth, and human nature was the part we talked about with the greatest enthusiasm, because economic theory that's very active today sees human beings as, and you can say it as, economic man who is rational. So rational economic man. Okay, now each word, rational. They mean rational as in I think I am. Enlightenment, rational. That's great, but I mean, look at our stuff. We say we're going to act with reason and compassion. So it isn't the only thing. Reason, this rational is part of it, but that really isolates that. And when they talk about economic, they mean people are driven by money. They actually always draw it as a picture of a dollar in the person's hand. And when they write about it, it's this idea that people are insatiable to buy things and to build wealth. In other words, there's no end to it. We always want more. And man, they mean man. Okay, the old patriarchal sense, man. Okay, so our theology, and we do have a theology. I know some of you are skeptical of that too, but our theology has a different, what we call anthropology, a different view of humankind. And some people have summed it up as sociable, adaptable human beings. The Universalist and Unitarians both teach us, and we still set up our governance this way, that we are individuals and social beings. We're always both. There's no way to separate them. And that we're born innocent, and we grow into, very quickly, 2-year-olds want to help people. And they used to call it, Hosea Ballou used to call it, we are happified. We are happified. We are fulfilled. We are made happy by helping others, by loving. Our Unitarian ancestors, anthropology was a little bit more complex. They said we were born with the seed of the divine in us, and that each person is holy, and that we can nurture those seeds to grow, and we like to grow, we like to learn, and we can grow in wisdom and in compassion, so in reason and love, okay? Until we're in full flower. I mean, we've got that rosebud there. We can all just be in full flower, be wise, loving, just people. But they were very clear that you couldn't do that as an individual. That if it's hell on earth, it's hard to nurture that into full flower. So they always understood they were part of a society and that we had to create heaven on earth, is how they would have said it. So we have a different anthropology. So is it true that we're insatiable consumers building wealth? A lot of research lately has shown that it's not true. I was interested in several studies that showed that even in our very consumer-oriented society, that people were not happy after certain of their basic needs were met. Now, we have a very high level in our society in the US of what we think our basic needs are. So I will list what they were, because I thought it was interesting. Stable housing, ability to get nutritious food as you need it, good health care, good education for your children, and be able to afford a 2-week vacation and at least 1 day off a week. It was very specific, one of the studies. But after you could afford to do that, people were not any happier. Yes, they might want more things, but they weren't, those things and that wealth did not make them happier. Okay, did not happify them. Okay? So I believe that that's just one study that shows that we are not insatiable. When I've traveled around the world, I have seen people live at all different income levels, have different ideas of what their basic needs are, but when their basic needs are met, they are happy. But they do want other things. There's a new economic institute that has been trying to understand more about what does motivate people. And economics just means to care for the resources in the world. And they have found, and they try to do this very much more cross-culturally. So they looked at studies all over the world. And they found 5 actions that people do that help them pretty much cross-culturally feel more fulfilled, that they want more of after their basic needs are met. And they're pretty simple things. 1, connect to the people around you. 2, being active in your body. 3, noticing the world around you. Behold. 4, let's see if I can remember. 4 is 5 is giving to others. And I have to look, that's why I have it here. 4 is, learning new skills. Yeah, like learning to memorize your sermon. Learning new skills. Okay. Now, those 5 things that we find fulfilling, I think that's interesting, because they're very congruent, both with the theological anthropology of our religious ancestors and with our mission today. We have the chance to do almost all of those things. I even think, I like to be active in my body and walk all over the sanctuary. So I get the chance to do all 5 things in this church as I meet the mission. So, anthropology. We are not just consumers. I'm going to sum it up. that is not the most main important thing about us being consumers. So there are other ways to talk about money besides marketing. Just want to sum it up. Okay, so then what is the tragedy of the commons? So when people talk about the tragedy of the commons, what they're saying, and what they've been saying for the last 100 years, is people voluntarily, without business or government, do not share the things they hold in common well. They destroy it. And they'll give an example. The air that we breathe. We're destroying it, right? That's a good example of what some people would call the tragedy of the commons. The only trouble is the economy is much more complex than just the commons. And we know that the tragedy of the air being destroyed, climate change, for instance, is caused by business as well as the state. And so you can't blame it all on these things that we hold in a more informal way in common. We don't talk about the commons much, so I wanted to give you an example so they could really understand what I mean by the commons. When I went to Transylvania, it's in Romania, it used to be in Hungary, it's in Romania, about 9 years ago, I spent a couple weeks there visiting our Unitarian cousins over there. I was in a Unitarian village, just a farming village. It had been Unitarian since 15-something. The church was that old, was older than that. It was very old. And it was, they had been very poor during the communist years because the state sucked off all the resources. And they had developed rich commons, common life, to survive that. They made sure everybody in town had a cow, so if there's a calf born, they gave it to whoever needed it. They just decided that they would do that because the state was no help. There was no business. Then they had a co-op dairy so that people could share the milk after they each milked their cow in the morning. And then when we were there, we were woken up every morning by someone from each family bringing their cows right by the parsonage down to the pasture, which was a common behind the parsonage. And one person, they take turns, one person would watch the cows for the day. So they had the common pasture. The church itself was a common. Of course, during communist years, they weren't allowed to use it, but they convinced the people to not rip the church down, use it as a school, but they met in secret for all those years. And for them, it was not just keeping a religion, the Unitarian religion alive, but it was a whole culture. They weren't allowed to use their Hungarian names or speak Hungarian, so they kept their whole Hungarian culture alive. That was their common property. And they cooperated beautifully to keep it alive because they survived intact. So, there was proof they survived with very little. It was very hard to meet their basic needs. So, when we got there, they had been in the European Union for just 3 years. And the European Union introduced some business opportunities and some political state monies to do things that they really appreciated. So it wasn't like those were necessarily bad things. They had indoor plumbing for the first time in a sewage treatment plant. Public health was much better. They were very happy about that, although it broke down a lot, and they were very happy to keep their outhouses. And I was happy they kept them too for those times. But some things didn't work out so well. They were convinced to have a business take over their co-op dairy. And within 3 years, it was out of business. It didn't make enough money. And they didn't have a dairy anymore, and that caused them great distress. They needed that dairy. So they became more aware. When I was there, they were really thinking through, oh, there's some things that are better cooperative. We do some things better cooperatively with informal ways of running it. The church, that common land, and boy, we're going to figure out a way to get our cooperative dairy back, okay? So that is what I mean, the commons. And yes, in some ways, it can do a lot of things better. In the United States of America, every voluntary association, which we are rich with, is part of the commons. This church is part of the commons. It is part of embedded economy. Yes, it's part of the economic system. It's part of how we manage our resources. But it manages some resources better than the state or business. Your family manages some resources better, too. That's the other part of the embedded economy. So, the common does not work through marketing. It works through people taking care of each other for the sake of their mission, which this church does very well. And we do that, one way we do that is by seeing and being seen, listening and being listened to. It is at the foundation of this common society that is for the common good. So, when you're called up and asked to do a stewardship visit, they're not marketing. They know you know what you want to give. You figured it out. You know what your family budget is. You know what you can do. They want to get to know you. And if you're not a member of the church, we invite you to talk to each other and build those same kind of relationships, because that is the foundation of this church. Now, economically, the commons has been very underrated for many years. And what we find in the commons is that it's very creative. I don't know if it's creative because it's been ignored for so long, but there's a lot of creative energy in the commons. And we can unleash its potential by meeting with one another, caring for it. I believe we can turn the world around. May it be so.
Please rise in body or in spirit, or prepare for singing our closing hymn, number 131 in the gray hymnal, Love Will Guide Us, hymn number 131. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us.
The words to the chalice extinguishing are found at the bottom of your order of service. We
Extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth,
the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment.
These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Okay, I'm going to put these on again. All right, I'm just going to reread how we serve each other in our mission. And then, of course, I'm going to invite you to go to the bulletin board where there's little clouds coming out of different people talking to each other. I want you to each put in a word about what this church means to you. And you got to bring your own pencil because it's to do it yourself, bulletin board. Okay. We serve each other in this mission by being present as witness to each other's lives, seeing each other and being seen, listening to each other and being listened to, agreeing to be open to the differences of belief and values we hold individually, learning to build ever-deepening connections with individuals and the community, and inviting each other's potential into the light in an atmosphere of encouragement and love. This service is over. Let us continue to serve one another, refreshed, renewed. Blessed be, and amen.